Welcome back to another episode of Together We Howl. My name's Ryan Tamori, partnership with 505 Sports Venture Foundation and us, the Pit Press. Hope everybody's having a good Wednesday night. Before I bring in our guest tonight, which is UNM offensive coordinator Luke Schleusner, just some house cleaning. The Pit Press Plus, your all-access pass to the heart and the hustle of the University of New Mexico Athletic Department with a monthly or yearly subscription. You'll unlock behind-the-scenes stories you won't hear anywhere else. Whether you're a diehard fan, a stats junkie, or here for spicy locker room gossip, the Pit Press Plus has something for you. Subscribe today. Support local sports journalism. That includes us, the Albuquerque Journal, Santa Fe, New Mexican. And remember, all Lobos don't settle for the sidelines. It's $2 a month or $25 for the year. We're still, I think, running a Father's Day special, $19.99 for the entire year. All Lobo, no filter. Go to the pitpressnm.com. Stay in the loop with Lobo Sports. Follow the Pit Press for exclusive updates, interviews, and behind-the-scenes content. Find us on X, Facebook, Instagram at the Pit Press NM, and we are now on TikTok, the Pit Press. Once again, this is another installment of Together We Howl, continued partnership with 505 Sports Venture Foundation and Kurt Roth. Thank them for putting this together. And Brian Santrock. The virtual series spotlights the heart and hustle behind University of New Mexico Athletic Department through live streams. You can find it later recorded on a podcast form on Wednesdays during the summer. Together We Howl extends beyond the field, offering fans an inside look at the stories, voices, and the community spirit that drive Lobo athletics. Obviously, you can go back to our page, find Spence, defensive coordinator for UNM football, Spence Nowinski, from last Wednesday, and then from, I think, 3 or 4 weeks ago, Bo Davidson, the general manager, almost said Bo Hightower there. Bo Davidson, the general manager, and Kurt Roth, they were able to join me a couple weeks ago. Reminder to those watching on X and YouTube, feel free to chime in with questions for Coach. I'm going to be asking some, but he'll be able to see them and we'll be able to answer. He'll be able to answer them here. Once again, without any other delay, let's see if I can find it. Tonight's guest on Together We Howl brings 2 decades of coaching experience to UNM football. He now serves as the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach under head coach Jason Eck. He's known for his innovative high-efficiency offenses. He helped guide Idaho to 3 consecutive FCS playoff appearances before reuniting with coach Jason Eck here in Albuquerque. And many of those that watch the show know how much I love FCS college football. He is a former all-conference wide receiver at North Dakota. He has developed NFL talent at every step, including Dallas Goedert, Tucker Kraft, and Kenny Galladay. His systems emphasize tempo, versatility, and getting the ball into the hands of playmakers, something Lobo fans can expect to see plenty of this fall. And I hope I did not butcher his last name. And I meant to ask him that because I also had been practicing it all day. So now I feel really dumb. He is UNM offensive coordinator Luke Schleusner. People butcher my last name, and I'm so sorry I didn't ask you that before we went on record. Did I say it correctly?
Yeah, you were. It was pretty close. So Schleusner.
Schleusner. I am incredibly sorry about that, Coach Schleusner. Well, welcome to the show. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. How's Albuquerque been treating you thus far?
It's been great. Really enjoying living here, and this is the first place I've lived where you can be outside year round. So I've lived in the north my whole life. So I was in the Midwest and then Idaho the last few years. So my wife and I are really enjoying Albuquerque so far.
Well, very happy to hear that. Again, for those watching on YouTube, X, and Facebook, feel free to chime in any questions that you have for Coach. I will start with a few. You have said that your offense is built on, quote, concepts, not plays. Can you explain what that means in practice?
Well, our players are going to have to have high football IQs and be able to move around and play around different spots in the formation. So, instead of just a guy memorizing a play and saying, well, I'm the X receiver, right? I do this. The guys have to understand where they're at, because style offense where there's a lot of pre-snap shifts and motions. trying to help the quarterback out with coverages, then also trying to hide some of our favorite plays from being predictable by using all that stuff pre-snap. So we like to move guys around a lot, and that's where it gets into. It's not just plays to memorize; they have to understand what the concept is.
How do you balance tempo and ball control in your offensive philosophy?
Uh, tempo is something that we will mix in and use to our advantage at times. But we're like I said, we're an NFL style, so we will huddle. Um, so again, we'll use tempo when it's to our advantage, but otherwise, we like huddling just the amount of multiplicity it gives us, and we really count a lot on our quarterback, to communicate to the offense, and again, it allows us with that multiplicity that I talked about earlier, with just lining up guys different spots and motions and different things that we're using. It allows allows us to do all that stuff. So but we'll definitely we'll mix some tempo when we feel like it's to our advantage. And that was one thing we were really good at Idaho, was just our time of possession, which I think is huge, because football is a team game, and you have to do everything you can as well to take pressure off of the defense. And if they're not out there as much because the offense is controlling the football and having long scoring drives, the defensive coordinators are usually pretty happy about that.
No, that's understood. I will ask about Jack Lane here in a bit. He was very good for you when you had him last year at Idaho. You didn't have him in the spring. James Labstein kind of took over, and hopefully I pronounced his name correct. He kind of saw a brunt of the snaps. You brought in Cole Welliver. I know he wasn't here. And then Gabriel Monchenbacher. What did you see out of those two quarterbacks in the spring that really, I don't know, pleased you?
Yeah, I think we have a lot of talent in the quarterback room, and obviously it changed a lot with the guys that moved on from the program and the guys that we brought in. But James Lobstein, really got better as the spring progressed. With Jack being down with an injury, James was able to take the bulk of the reps with the ones, and really show that he has the talent to be an FBS starting quarterback. He's a physical guy. He runs well, has a strong arm, and there's a lot of things we were asking him to do that he hadn't had to do in the past. And to his credit, he really took the coaching and embraced it and improved as the spring went on. And then Gabe had a nice spring for us as well. Moved up the depth chart and did some good things. And now we have Cole and Toa Favai is a true freshman that's here now in the summer. So those guys are getting some reps here in the summer, and we're able to work with them a little bit now with NCAA rules, and I'm just excited about the talent we have in the quarterback room.
If I may ask you about Jack Lane last year when he did play, very accurate. He threw for 1,400 yards, 14 touchdowns as opposed to 4 interceptions. You've mentioned you're a pro style offense. I love the history of the NFL. I've tried to combine my journalism and history degree. I appreciate it, and I love the history of college football as well as college football. It's probably my favorite sport to watch. But that's a pretty accurate quarterback. Can you talk about his accuracy and maybe what kind of game he brings, and what, if he's going to play, what Lobo fans can expect out of him?
Yeah, Jack is, he's getting healthy this summer and doing a lot of throwing. So, as long as he doesn't have any setbacks, I think he should be full steam ahead. Uh, Jack is, I've coached 24 years, and I think it's pretty easy for me to say that Jack's the smartest player I've ever coached. He's really a coach on the field. Spends just countless hours watching film, dissecting the offense. Uh, he knows where to go with the football, and he gets it out. And he's really, he's a good athlete, but he's really a pocket quarterback that wants to sit in there and not afraid to take hits. And unfortunately, that hurt him last year when he got hit by that big D tackle from Oregon. That I think he was like a first or second round pick, and got hurt last year in our opener. But he came back late in the season, and our offense really hit full stride, and he put up big numbers, in those last few games. So he's a really talented football player. Works the middle of the field a lot, throws the ball with a lot of velocity, and is just smart and is really just a coach on the field. So he's an extension of our coaching staff when he's out there. So he's a big help to the guys, just understanding what they need to do.
His poise going into that Oregon game, you guys were in that, and I know he got hurt. What did you maybe, I don't necessarily saw him grow, but what did you take away from him walking into Autzen like that and kind of controlling that game and being in that game?
Yeah, there was a lot of hype for him going into that game because he's from Lake Oswego, Oregon. So it's kind of a homecoming, and I think he had 30, 40 people in the stands to watch him play. Um, and really he didn't have a great first half, but he's just such a resilient guy that he didn't get down. Gave us a chance to win that football game into the fourth quarter. So, uh, just the belief that he had in the leadership that he showed because, I think we went into that game 48.5 point underdogs. So, nobody expected much from us, but in our locker room at Idaho, we expected to go there and win that football game. And that was the attitude we took into it. And, that was the belief that Jack had. And like I said, he didn't play a great first half. And then, he came out in the second half and led us on a couple scoring drives and, put us in a position to win that football game. So just his belief, his intensity, and he had really been close to being our starter the previous 2 years. He came in as a true freshman and competed for the job and ended up being our backup. But he had waited a long time for that moment. So, special for him to get to play. And then, it was tough because he got hurt in that game. But, even his maturity after the game, like he had a lot of people at that had came to see him. And, he's sitting there and knows that he has a broken collarbone and is going to be out the next couple months. And, he's conversing with family and friends and, putting on a happy face. And, tough thing for any young man to go through. But, he just really showed a lot of grit and a lot of character in that game.
No, I that game was on my radar and I saw the score and I had to throw it on. It was great to see you guys hang in there. I don't want to be cliche, but I am going to be here. I don't think there are any moral victories probably within a coaching staff, but for the way you guys played and the way, the offense in the second half had a couple scoring drives, did you guys take a lot and learn from that game? And obviously, your success. You're in the quarterfinal of the FCS playoffs last year. Did you and Coach Eck take a lot of that learning experience and apply that to your run in the Big Sky?
Yeah, we did. I mean, that gave us the confidence that we knew we could play with anybody. And, um, like I said, difficult situation with Jack going down that game, and you're gonna, miss your starting quarterback the next 8 weeks. But that game gave us all kinds of confidence, and we were able to go into Wyoming, which was a tough place to play, and win the game the next week. With our backup quarterback who had not taken a college snap until that point. So uh, our team just had a lot of confidence and a lot of belief, and that's really what we sold the guys on year round. And it was kind of a snake bit year because we had a lot of injuries and made it tough. But we found a way to win 10 games. So. Uh, just that resilient attitude. And that's the type of culture that we want to be able to build here at the University of New Mexico as well. And, I think Coach Heim, our strength staff, is doing a great job this summer of instilling that toughness. And then, our guys got a taste of it in spring ball of, what our expectations to do things here.
No, appreciate that answer. UNM, the strength of the strength of the offense last year was the offensive line. You do get Richard Pierce back, and he was a team captain last year. But with so many transfers on the offensive line, what is your approach to building chemistry up front?
Yeah, I think Cody Booth came with us from Idaho, and he knows what we're looking for and how we want things done. And, um, you know, he's done a great job of bringing that group together because, I believe we brought in 7 transfer O linemen just with the situation that you talked about of just having one returning starter. And, um, so we got to mold that group together as fast as we can. And, uh, obviously things start up front. And last year they were able to run the football incredibly effective. And we challenge those guys up front, the returners that were with us. We're running a different style offense, so um, again, we challenged the offensive line to change, and I'll give those guys credit again. They've embraced everything we've asked them to do. So those big guys up front, we asked them to lose a lot of weight just with what we do, and we.
Not sure if I lost coach there. Think I did.
Okay, I think I have you again.
Perfect. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Not
no
sure.
worries. Yeah, but I was just saying that we asked our offensive linemen to lose a lot of weight just to become more athletic, and what we're going to ask them to do of playing out in space with pulling and screen passes and different things where those guys have to be athletes. So again, they've embraced it. They've working really hard with Coach Heim, and I'm excited about what those guys can accomplish.
I guess I got to ask. It's not easy to ask a room full of big guys to go on a diet, is it?
No, not really. So those were a little bit of difficult conversations of like, hey, you're 325 pounds right now, and we want you more around 310. So I think those guys were surprised when we got here because again, I think the old staff, they wanted them as big as they could get them, and just with what we're asking them to do, we really need athletes up front. So asked them to change their diets and change some of their habits, and like I said, they've done a great job embracing that.
That's good to hear. I have to ask you, I think probably, and I've joked I'm just a talking head, but your running back room between obviously Scott Trey Humphrey, you have DJ McKinney, you have Deshaun Buchanan, and Damon Bankston. And then between the four of those guys, and it's been deemed kind of, I know somebody's thrown around it's an FCS all-star team with what you guys have built. It's 552 carries for over 3,500 yards, 32 TDs, and each of those four running backs averaged over 5 yards a carry. I think Lobo fans know the name Scott Trey Humphrey, and I know a couple of those guys were battling some hammy issues in the spring. Who stood out to you, and what can you in the spring, and what can you say about these four running backs in this room?
Yeah, we have great depth at the position, and Scott Trey, we'd played against him twice at Idaho, and obviously I know New Mexico played him last year in the opener. So Scott Trey is a really elite running back that, to be honest, we thought we were done recruiting running backs, and then Scott Trey was available. So we just thought he was too good to pass up. So we ended up taking him late. But we knew just from playing against him that guy plays at a different speed, and he's a very physical back. So I think he has star written all over him, and we saw glimpses of it in the spring. In the spring game, he ripped off around a 40-yard touchdown run, and he only ended up getting to play like 6 plays in the spring game because I told Coach Johnson, our running back coach, after that one, I'm like, I've seen enough. Like, let's get him to Michigan. So, but yeah, and then Damon Bankston was our other main back in the spring, and Damon had over 1,000 yards rushing at Weber State, including over 100 yards against the University of Washington last year. So he's a really elusive back as well. That I think those guys are a great 1-2 punch, and Day Day and DJ both missed the majority of spring with hamstring injuries, but DJ was the Conference USA Freshman of the Year, and we've seen a little bit of him now this summer, and he's dynamic as well. He's fast and really brings that. He's a smaller back, but he really brings that speed element, and built low to the ground with a great center of gravity. So and then obviously Day Day, we had at Idaho, who had a 200-yard game late for us in the regular season against Portland State, and is another high-level player. So I'm going to have to be creative and find some ways to get 2 backs on the field at times as well, because those guys are certainly some of the best players on our football team.
I did not do my due diligence and homework tonight. I've butchered 3 names. I am very, very sorry. I when I see the running back room, and you said you're going to be creative, and I think of Bill Belichick, and just not 25 years ago, but well into the 2000s. Is it kind of going to be a running back by committee?
I mean, we'll see how it plays out. I do think those guys, they all want the bulk of the carries, and the great thing is it's going to be really competitive, and um, that's a position where you deal with injuries as well. We know just playing the nature of that position and the physicality of it, that there's some injuries that can happen from time to time in that room. So, we're blessed with the depth that we have, and we'll go through camp and kind of see how it plays out.
Appreciate that answer. Asking you about the wide receivers. The name that sticks out is Keegan Johnson. He's been at the P4 level. He comes from Kansas State. You've got Isaiah Blair from a junior college. Michael Buckley returns. He had a couple of catches last year. But you guys had Keegan Johnson transfer in. What sticks out to you about his game?
Yeah, you mentioned it, but Keegan, he played at Iowa and he played at Kansas State, and he started several games, and um, showed the ability to be a big time football player. He was looking for a bigger role, and uh, you know, he was excited to come here and embrace that opportunity. He's a guy we've known about him, Coach Eck and I, for a long, long time. Uh, his brother was an All-American receiver for us at South Dakota State, so we knew Keegan. He came to our football camp when he was a sophomore, going into his junior year of high school. We actually think we were the first ones to offer him a scholarship that day. Uh, but yeah, so he's a guy we've known a lot about for a long time, know the family really well, and I think that connection helped us land him. Uh, because I think he certainly had his pick of where he wanted to go, and we're hoping he can come here and be a star. And um, he's an all-around receiver. He's physical. He runs well, catches the football well. I think he's a good route runner. So I think he has a ton of upside, and I think he can really have a breakout senior season for us. Um, Behind him, you mentioned a couple of the guys, but Michael Buckley, just does everything right, and a worker, and I believe has continued to improve, and just a positive leader for the football program. Sean Miller, I think Sean got in the doghouse a little bit last season, but he's been a talented football player that we think has a lot of upside as well. And then, Isaiah Blair, came from us from the junior college, and uh, showed flashes in spring of what he can be as well. So, we don't have a lot of proven guys in that wide receiver room, but I think we have a lot of hungry guys that are looking forward to it. And I should mention as well, Kadir Jop, KD, really had a guy that stuck around from the previous coaches, and KD's done an unbelievable job in the weight room. Had a really good spring for us, and has continued to show, that he's ready and hungry for a breakout senior season.
No, appreciate that answer as well. Sticking with wide receivers, you had somebody like Jordan Dwyer last year, 78 receptions, over close to 1,200 yards, 12 TDs, over 15 yards of reception. And you've coached some NFLers also in your day. But what is it like to have somebody of that caliber and talent and have a season like that last year with Jordan Dwyer?
Yeah, that was just fun to watch. And JD had, he'd been behind a couple of guys. We had Hayden Hatton, who was a FCS All-American, and Jermaine Jackson, who was also an all-conference player and actually played for the New Orleans Saints last year. So, uh, you know, uh, Dwyer had to kind of bide his time, and then really had a breakout season last year. So, um, yeah, again, in our offense, we're getting the ball to our playmakers, and we're getting it to the guys who show they can do it. So, he showed a lot of talent, and showed that he deserved to have the ball thrown in his direction, and made a lot of plays for us. So, but we throw the ball quite a bit in this offense, and we throw the ball down the field. I like to attack and put pressure on defenses. So, it's not a dink and dunk offense. We're going to push the ball down the field, and uh, challenge the defense uh, vertically.
I would be excited to see some big plays, especially maybe in Ann Arbor over Labor Day weekend. Going to go to going to go to some of the fans now. I can't talk tonight. For a question, is there, going back to the running backs, is there any chance we can see a type of option game with this many backs?
Potentially. We probably just don't run our quarterback as much. Um, but I always say we got to fit our offense around the quarterback. So, a lot of that'll depend, as we go through fall camp and who emerges as the starting quarterback. But, I think you always want to have some elements of that and put some pressure on the defense with a little bit of option game. But it's not something we've majored in the past. So, uh, I want to make sure we take care of the ball too and don't put any pitches on the ground. So, but we'll be creative in finding ways to get those guys the ball.
I would imagine, again, I'm not an X's and O's guy. I love history. I can't tell you what I did 10 minutes ago, but I can tell you what happened in the Super Bowl in the third quarter 30 years ago. But I would imagine in a pro style offense, it's not many option plays. Um, Appreciate you answering that question, Coach. Kind of switching to the tight ends, and I know Dorian Thomas, he had a big Saturday before your spring game. I think tight ends kind of accumulated for like 4 touchdowns in one of those spring Saturday practices. But what role do you envision for tight ends like Cade Keith and a Dorian Thomas in your system?
Yeah, I mean, I think those guys can have huge years. Obviously going back, when Coach Eck and I were together at South Dakota State, we had Dallas Goddard, who ended up being a second round pick of the Philadelphia Eagles. And then, Tucker Kraft followed him and was a third round pick of the Packers. So obviously those guys were really talented. Um, but, in our system, they were allowed to shine and get thrown a lot of passes. So um, Dorian and Cade are both excellent pass catchers and guys that uh, we're going to look to get the ball to a lot because they can do a lot with it. So really excited about just the upside that those guys have and ability, and excited to coach them and help get the best football out of them.
You just mentioned Dallas, who won a Super Bowl with the Eagles, obviously in February. You also coached. You mentioned just Tucker Kraft and Kenny Galladay. Is it been cool to coach players like that and see them have success at a high level? I mean, Kenny Galladay had a big year with the Lions, and Tucker Kraft had kind of become a reliable target for Jordan Love. Can you speak to those players getting to that level, maybe how hard it is and have that kind of success?
Yeah, I've been really blessed in my career and had some great ones that I was able to be the position coach for. And, you probably missed my best one, Adam Thielen. He's starting year 12 with the Carolina Panthers this year. And he was a guy that I coached for 3 years at Minnesota State Mankato. But all those guys, fundamentally sound, high football IQ, and really just ultimate competitors, which I think is what separates those guys. And obviously you have to have physical ability and we all understand that you need to be strong and run fast and things like that. But all of those guys, just their mental game was off the charts as well. Um, and Dallas is just a unbelievable competitor. So it was fun to see him. The Eagles had kind of been knocking on the door and it had lost a Super Bowl and been in the playoffs several years. So excited for him to get that first Super Bowl trophy.
And I owe you an apology because I did write a release on this and I had Adam Thielen in there, and then I wrote the intro and I forgot Adam Thielen. So I apologize. Yeah, Minnesota State Mankato, the Mavericks, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. Adam's just an unbelievable success story of, we gave him a $500 scholarship in July to show up in August. He had played in the Minnesota high school all-star game, and the coaches were just raving about him. But obviously it was like July and we were starting football in a month. So, we had $500 to give him, and luckily he took it and, um, emerged as a unbelievable player there for the Mavericks and has been able to continue that success in the NFL. And to be starting year 12, that's a really impressive accomplishment.
Yeah, I believe he's. I know he's all pro, and I know a couple time all pro, and then Pro Bowler. And I know that I think it was 8 straight games with 100 yards or more, which is an NFL record still. So that's very impressive. Um, Going to go back to the questions now from Ronnie Chavez. You're known as a creative play caller. Can you give us an example of the adaptability you have maybe mid game as a play caller, maybe when the game plan didn't go the way you want to do, and how do you change it?
Yeah, I think the big thing for us is just, finding a way to run the football. Um, so whether it's finding a certain formation where we think we get good angles for our guys, or um, ended up changing a scheme, or adjusting a blocking scheme. Maybe we're pulling a guy and now we're taking the pull off and just having the guys zone it. I think that's that cat and mouse game with the defense of, finding a way. Probably the best example is, we played in the spring national championship. when we were at South Dakota State, playing against Sam Houston, and uh, we've had really good offenses. So the bad thing about that is we tend to get some creative things from the defense and them doing things that we didn't expect or didn't prepare for. So in that Sam Houston game, uh, they had played a whole lot of man coverage throughout the season, and then when they played us, they didn't play any man, and we're kind of overstacking towards our tight end side, so we ended up getting some split side run game going, and our freshman running back that day had 190 some yards rushing. So that was just a game that stands out to me of like we were able to make some adjustments at halftime and come out and have a really great second half. But it's always that cat and mouse game with the defense, and um, looking to exploit their weaknesses and find a way to get your playmakers in space.
I appreciate that answer. Um, we had the pleasure of having Coach Nowinski on last week, another Midwest guy. Um, is it been fun kind of going head? Was it kind of fun going head to head with him in spring? And what kind of coach is he? Because he was a pleasure to talk to. He talked about pouring gas on his guys. He talked about I don't know. He was pretty wild, and he was great. He was one of the best guests. And I've been doing this quite a long time, but he was one of the best guests. But can you talk about his coaching style and what's your relationship with him like? Obviously, I know you guys are probably in different rooms, but what can you talk about Coach Nowinski?
Yeah, Coach Nowinski's a fiery guy and a colorful personality and a lot of fun to be around. He and I are very different personalities, but we've been friends for a long, long time. We coached together at Minnesota State Mankato back in 2005 and 2006. Um, so I've known Spence for a long, long time, and he actually coached our offensive line my first year at Mankato. So he was the O-line coach, and I was the tight end coach. So we've known each other for a long, long time, and a lot of respect. And this is we're getting to work together again after all these years, and um, very impressed what he's able to do on the defensive side of the ball. Uh, his scheme was a real pain in the butt for us to prepare for in the spring, and put a lot of pressure on us and made us better coaches. So, uh, I'm excited to see what he can do with the guys, and I think his scheme's going to give a lot of guys trouble, and I think he just gets the guys to play hard. Um, so I know that New Mexico had struggles on defense last year, and um, I really think just with Coach Nowinski's coaching, we're going to see a big improvement on that side of the ball.
I mention it all the time with the Rocky Long era. UNM was meant for defense. Um, and we've had several former players on that played under Rocky Long, and a lot of the guys, the consensus has been we might not have won the game, but the team was going to feel it next week against their opponent, kind of dragon ass type thing. So it's very cool to hear. Not that I'm not, sucker for a big play, pass down the field. You've been with Coach Eck quite a while. And I told you before we hopped on, the enthusiasm from you guys is bar none, especially to not talking ill, but compared to what we had last year here in Albuquerque. Can you just talk about what kind of coach Jason Eck is? And it seems that you and he, at the head coach, kind of get. I think the consensus was getting more out of more from less. Um, can you just talk about what kind of coach he is? And, obviously you've had success at Idaho and you followed him here. He seems to be a real, man of the people.
Yeah, Coach Eck is a great leader of young men, and um, he's a positive, fun, high energy guy. So it's fun to be in the office every day. It's fun to go out to practice. He loves to compete. He was a big guy, so there's always you know, uh, food treats in practice for the competitors that win. Whether it was when we practice in the morning in the spring, that have donuts, and then a Saturday afternoon that have popsicles and things like that. So, but he's a great motivator. Knows the vision of the program and what he wants, and just a high energy, positive guy. So I think that's the best thing about Coach Eck is just every day he comes to the office and he's consistent and positive and likes to have fun, and what you're going to get, and the players, that really attracts them to him, and I'd describe him as a player's coach, and a fun guy to play for. So that has helped us with our current squad and helps us in recruiting, and I think you've seen that excitement already around the Albuquerque community of he wants to be involved. He wants to get the fans involved. He wants community support, and he's excited to be here, and I am too. And we've coached together for the last 10 seasons, or this will be our 10th season together. Um, so we work really well together, and have a great working relationship, and uh, just excited about what we can accomplish here.
You mentioned that great, working relationship and maybe the camaraderie. Do you think that really helps you guys with success, just not on the field, but off the field?
I do, yeah. I mean, he's like I said, he's a great leader, and I think he knows that I'm bringing his same vision, and he doesn't need to worry about what's going to happen with the offense, and um, just our continuity, and being on the same page of the things we look for, whether it be in recruiting or with the current roster, or how we need to practice, or how we need to attack and implement a game plan. Just being together for so long, we kind of know how each other think, and we challenge each other too. We don't always agree on things, so that's good that we have worked together long enough. We're not afraid to challenge each other, and look for the best way to accomplish something. So, uh, just excited about the opportunity here at New Mexico, and the challenge, and continuing to do the things we've done in the past.
I appreciate that answer. More of a comment here from John Romero on YouTube. Coach Schleusner. Hope I said it correctly that time. Thank you. And I
Yep.
think you go by Coach Slice, correct?
Yeah, a lot of guys just call me Coach Slice, so that's a lot easier.
I'm that's a little bit more respectable than my last name. I get the Annie, the Broadway musical Annie treatment. Instead of tomorrow, it's Tamori, Tamori. But Coach Leisner, thank you for coming on the Pit Press and sharing insight on some of your offensive personnel. Welcome to Lobo Land, and extremely fortunate to have you on board leading the troops. Again, not a question but a comment. So I'm sure you appreciate that from some of the alumni and fans. And I know John Romero, I believe, is an Aggie. He's an NMSU alumni, but he also supports the Lobos because he lives in the area. But I'm sure you are happy to see comments like that.
Yeah, I mean, the reception that we've gotten in Albuquerque has been great, and the leadership of the university, and boosters and fan support has all been a huge positive for us. And we can tell that they're hungry for a winner here, and we're hungry to get that going. So, and again, we want the community to be involved. So, um, that's just, it's exciting to have the support, and we've seen it. And I saw it in the at the basketball games with the pit being filled up and sold out crowds. So, now we have to fill up the football stadium.
I like to. I believe I was telling Coach Nowinski this before I went to UNM, and I'm a big New York Football Giants fan. A couple of my friends, we always lived and died with the UNM football team. We bought tickets and we snuck and we sat behind the bench, and it was a big deal for us every UNM football game. But when you went those games 20 some years ago, 20 plus years ago, you could not walk the concourse. There were 44,000 people in there, and you had to go to the bathroom before, halftime, or a break, or you had to go during the game, which we didn't like to do. Why I bring that up, you saw what the pit was this year, and to get that across the street. But what did you think of Lobo fan in the pit?
Yeah, I mean, I was blown away. Our first when our staff got here, it was right before Christmas. We flew out, and got here, and I'm thinking like I can't remember the date. It was like a Tuesday or Wednesday, like right before Christmas, and school was out. So I'm thinking like, you know, in that scenario, most universities I've been at, you'd be happy to get a half-filled basketball arena. Um, and is a huge crowd into the game, excited. Um, just leading to a huge home court advantage, and that's the thing we're looking for. Is we'd love to have Lobo Nation out supporting us, and loud crowds, and making it tough on the opposing offenses to get plays called and get things communicated. So you just see the advantage it gives you, and how much impact it can have on a game when the fans are there, and loud and into it. So again, just excited, and seeing that community support. That was my first day in Albuquerque. To see that, it made me feel good that I'd made the right decision to come here.
I think a lot of Lobo fans would be happy to hear that. With the ever changing landscape of, and I'm not going to delve too much into it, but a quick question about it. Cliche. It's been a changing atmosphere in college athletics. Have you seen, and I know the House settlement, it's over my head. I don't understand it to a full capacity, but have you embraced NIL and what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, the rules are the same for everybody, and you constantly have to be adapting as a coach. And obviously we adapt our schemes over the year, and we adapt in recruiting when they change the rules. So, this is just part of it. And um, whatever rules they set, those are the ones that we'll follow and go by. And um, so it's new challenges, it's different challenges, but there's always going to be challenges. And um, I think our university and our athletic department leadership and Kurt and his leadership team, have done a great job to make sure that we can be competitive and give us all the resources we need to be at the top of the Mountain West.
Appreciate that answer. And it popped in my head, I've had the pleasure now of having a majority of this coaching staff, whether it be on this show, Together We Howl, or our show, the Pit Press Live, or the Pit Press. And I had the pleasure during spring ball of talking one-on-one with Coach Daniel Prado, the host, associate head coach, and the special teams coach. Then we had him on our show. He seems like a 3:30 a.m., 4 a.m. guy, a lot of energy. I know he's very active on social media. I had a pleasure, it's been a pleasure talking to all you guys, but Coach DePrado seems like a different breed. What can you speak about him?
Yeah, he's a guy I really didn't know before this transition. He had worked with Coach Eck previously, but has a great track record, brings a lot of experience and different experience from what we've had. So that's good just to hear another side to it. And I know he's excited to be in Albuquerque, and um, he's got to get up early. He's got that commute from Rio Rancho. So, he and I always like to joke about it because I live like 5 minutes from campus. So, we'll joke about it that about commutes and gas and things like that because I live like a mile and a half from the school. So, uh, but yeah, so he's up early and in there usually before me, and brings energy and as the uh, associate head coach, just trying to be an extension of Coach Eck and, make sure he brings leadership to the team and to our staff.
Yeah, I used to commute in out of New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. So yeah, it's a far commute from Rio Rancho. That's a great story. Back to the comments. Ronnie Chavez here, Coach. With the early season struggle a possibility, how would you keep the guys' confidence up and motivated during that stretch? Obviously, we're all hoping for a successful start to the season, but to reiterate, how do you guys keep confidence up and motivated during that stretch?
Yeah, I mean, I think we just have to keep selling the belief and the process, and we talk about that with the guys all the time. Of control what you can control and trust the process, and the score will take care of itself. So obviously we have a very challenging schedule right out the gate with Michigan week 1 and UCLA week 3. So we know we're going to have to come out and play our best football early, and whether we win or lose those games, the most important game is going to be the next one. So obviously want to have positivity and build off those games and set ourselves up for future success. But one game is not going to make or break this program, and we know that we have long-term goals that are going to take the whole season to accomplish. So we just have to keep moving in the right direction and stay consistent, stay positive, stay together. Uh, to be able to overcome if we do have some adversity.
I appreciate you answering that question because, as you always say, why that's why they play the games. You mentioned early, um, tough opponents with Michigan, UCLA, Boise, and UNLV are on the schedule this year. But starting with those games, in environments like Ann Arbor at Michigan Stadium, and I think the Rose Bowl is more of a spectacle of being the actual game. Maybe not talking ill of UCLA, but not a UCLA game. But how do you plan to keep the offense adaptable as you face that early schedule with Michigan and UCLA?
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to be able to, it's not something that we've really started game planning or looking at yet, and So we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But know how talented Michigan can be, and what Coach Harbaugh was able to build there, and um, I believe the coach Sharon Moore, that took over last year after Coach Harbaugh left, uh, obviously wants to keep that same identity going of playing really physical football. So uh, I know they played great defense at the end of the year, and beat Ohio State and Alabama their last two. So we know that game's going to be a huge challenge, and um, like I said, we'll focus on us, and we'll focus on controlling what we can control. So. Um, we'll make sure we have a great plan to communicate, and we'll work on some crowd noise things to make sure that we're ready for that environment. And then we'll embrace the challenge and go out there and do our best and play to win the game. So, um, I'm excited. It'd be a great environment for our players to play in those venues. And, I've never been to Ann Arbor or to the Rose Bowl. So, I'm excited to go coach in those venues and have the challenge. So, um, one step at a time, one play at a time.
Appreciate that answer as well. A few more minutes here with UNM football offensive coordinator Luke Schleusner, Coach Slice. Um, I will be making the trek covering the football team this fall with so I'm excited. I've been all over the country, so I've never been to either of those two venues, and I'm a suffering New York Mets fan, and a buddy of mine, I'm going to go see the Tigers play the Mets during that weekend, so I'm excited for that. But is it easy to get maybe players hyped up for games at a Michigan stadium?
Yeah, I mean, I think that'll be easy because that's the first game, and all the work that the guys put in, and playing in that type of venue. But we're trying to recruit the right guys that love the game. So whether it's Michigan week 1 or Idaho State week 2, um, I really just don't think the mindset changes a whole lot. We want to go out there and compete, and put our best foot forward, and um, go out there and be competitive. So um, those are fun environments, those are fun memories to make, and um, we'll just attack them as they present themselves.
Appreciate that. I don't, I know where Idaho is in Moscow, and I'm trying to think where Idaho State is, and it's gonna bug me. But
It's in Pocatello,
Pocatello,
Na
Idaho. That's right. Is it?
Napoleon Dynamite country.
That's right. That's right. I appreciate that. Um, was it kind of funny that you saw Idaho State on the schedule when you took this job? I don't know. I'm gathering Idaho State is kind of a big rivalry. But did you kind of get a chuckle out of that when you saw, oh, I'm going to open up the home schedule with Idaho State?
I did, and we've gotten to know those coaches a little bit over there, so I was kind of laughing about it. We just can't avoid you guys, but uh, that's Dan Hawkins' son. His name's slipping my mind, but it's Coach Hawk over there, and he does a great job, and I'm sure he'll have those guys prepared to play. And obviously, he's going to have a little jump up because, just knowing that he's played against us the last 3 years, so he'll have a good idea of what we like to do offensively, and I'm sure they'll have a good plan for us. So, but yeah, I kind of laughed when I saw that because I was talking to Jack Lane about it because actually, Jack's freshman year, our starter had gotten hurt at the end of the year, and Jack, his first college start was against Idaho State. So to come here and have those guys on the schedule again, it's a little coincidence.
Once again, I appreciate that answer. Um, I think wrapping things up here. Well, and one more question from fans: have you spoken to any alumni, and has any alumni reached out to you, Coach? And being from the north, are you a skier or love the snow? We have a lot in mountains that accumulate a lot of snow.
Well, I know Coach Ack kind of handles the
Hopefully, we can wrap things up there. I think I may have lost him again. I'll give it a second. Oh, there he is.
Okay, I think I got it.
Yep. Sorry
Um,
about that.
Yeah, no worries. But I grew up in the Midwest where there weren't a lot of mountains. There was a lot of snow, and I didn't like it too much. So I would say my winter sport is basketball. So,
You
I
came to
do
the right
not.
place then.
Yeah, I do not take advantage of that type of weather, and not a big fan. So really excited. I love living in Albuquerque this year, January, February, March, and not seeing any snow. So that was quite refreshing to not have to worry about that. So really enjoying our time here, and taking advantage of all the sun-filled days.
Appreciate that. Lastly, before I wrap things up here, and I want to thank you again for joining us and taking an hour out of your Tuesday night, um, in the middle of the summer, and the I guess the balmy 83 degrees. But any last pitch to Lobo fan, and why this team should be exciting this year, and what you guys plan on building for the future?
Like I've mentioned several times throughout the podcast, or excuse the interview, um, we're excited to be here, excited to embrace the city and the culture of New Mexico, and our goal is to put a product on the field that the university and the whole state can be proud of, and um, I think our guys are embracing the hard work, and really getting after it in the weight room, and putting in the work to be great. So, it's that time of year. We don't know exactly what type of team that we're going to be yet, but um, the guys are doing everything they can right now to, uh, you know, do great, and compete and get after it. So, uh, just excited, excited to be here, and excited to embrace the state and city, and really excited to be Albuquerque's team. So
Appreciate that answer as well. Coach, once again, the offensive coordinator for your UNM football team, Luke Schleusner, and I'm still going to not sleep tonight because I butchered your name to start the show. So I apologize for that again. But I want to thank you for your time tonight. And 505 Sports Venture Foundation, and Kurt Roth and Brian Sandrock, over there getting this set up. I can't thank you enough once again for taking an hour out of your Wednesday night to join us here.
yeah, I appreciate you having me on, and appreciate sharing some insight with Lobo fans, and just excited to get going, excited for that first game, and excited for the home opener the week after. So looking forward to it. And football is a long off season, so that's always tough in this profession. You play your last game in December, and then don't play again until the end of August, September. So we're really excited, and looking forward to it, and just working hard every day to put the best product we can on the field.
Uh, Appreciate that answer. I will let you go, and I hope I'll be around the program in the fall. Looking to have another conversation again, but I appreciate your insight to a dummy like me that doesn't know the X's and O's and some of those stories. So appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right, pleasure. That was UNM football offensive coordinator Luke Schleusner, and I still feel bad for butchering his name. I won't let that go. Great insight there, and I appreciate the comments on YouTube and Twitter. Before I sign off tonight, tomorrow night we'll be having UNM athletic director Fernando Lobo on the Pit Press. He'll be on at 8:15, and then 9-ish, former All-American with track and field. You may know her as Sandy Martin. Friday night, we will be live, Friday evening, 5 to 7 p.m. At Rio Bravo Brewing Company. Spencer Hill there will be. We had him on last night. You can check out our show on our page. And then Coach Jason Eck will be there Friday, a little after 6 o'clock. So again, Rio Bravo Brewing Company. It's on Second Street. I'll have to get an actual address. I forget it, but I know it's on Second Street. So looking forward to that. You're welcome to come out. It's kind of a sunglass release party, but we got Jason Eck on to come talk a little bit of football. So very happy about that. Once again, we'll be back with the Pit Press tomorrow night. And everybody have a good evening.